Welcome, Paul. From what I know, you started making up songs at the age of 5. You are a composer, songwriter, recording artist, performer, teacher. You're the founder and artistic director of KidBand. Ellie, you are co-founder of the band Trapezoid and also a current band, Paul Reisler and A Thousand Questions. And what just impresses me a lot is over the past 45 years, you have performed in over 3,000 concerts, recorded close to, I think, 3 dozen albums. And I don't remember the number of songs you wrote, but you might want to share that with us. It's just mind-blowing.
But it's around 3,000.
Incredible.
Give or take. I've lost track. And, and the important thing is I just love writing songs. And so, and I've been doing it for, I'm 74 now. So
Yeah.
it accumulates after 70 years. That's it. If I was only in my 20s, it wouldn't be that impressive.
Yeah, and before we started recording, you shared that I think this week to you wrote another 6 songs. So what I thought might be interesting to explore, and you tell me what you think about that, to take us a little bit deeper into what constitutes music that resonates. And most of us heard terms such as harmony, rhythm, melody. Maybe as a start, could you explain us a little bit what are these elements, and are these elements something you consciously consider or explore? Is this something just naturally kind of resulting in what you come up with?
Well, you see, I think music is a language. And just as we're speaking English right now, music is a language. And one of the great things about having written 3,000 songs is you get fluent in that language, just as you might get fluent in, Spanish or French. You don't get fluent by, just thinking, oh, well, I want to do this, but you do it. And that's how the process of making music has always been for me. It's not about writing songs, it's writing songs. So many people like to have written but hate writing. And I happen to love writing. And because I love writing songs, I can sort of speak in that language. I'm reminded, and I may end up repeating something we said last time.
No problem.
Remember, so you can cut that out. But
Mhm.
I remember back when I was a kid, there was this show called the Dobie Gillis Show, and Dobie was kind of a little wacky, and then he had a friend, Maynard G. Krebs, who was kind of well, back then you would have called him a bohemian or something, but definitely a hippie. And one time Maynard stuck his finger in a light socket and he lit up, and all of a sudden he could take any song and make it into a hit. And because, somehow he intuited the language of music from that.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. I didn't have to stick my fingers in the light socket. I just had to write thousands of songs so that I became fluent in the language. And when I'm really having a good day, someone says something to me, and in my mind, it translates into lyric. That, like, the kids can say something, they might say something kind of in an ordinary kind of language, but something in my mind, like it's like translating it into music, and I leave out certain words, and I might move this word here and there, and it turns into a more poetic language. So I think that's one of the gifts of writing a lot. Leonard Bernstein said it is ambiguity that turns prose into poetry. So someone may say something in a very kind of ordinary, unambiguous way, and you delete a few words and it becomes a little more ambiguous. And by ambiguous, I don't mean vague. By ambiguous, I mean variety of possible meaning. And so it gives the listener a place to enter in, because they go, oh, and they have their own interpretation of what's being said. So I guess I guess I know a lot about music from having written. Uh, the different elements, uh, you see, I believe people ask me what comes first, the words or the music? And I say yes, because the music is in the words and the words are in the music if you're really listening. And that doesn't mean that there's just one set of lyric for a melody. There can be many different ones, but if you're listening to that other language, uh, they exist within each other. So we have, the lyric, and when we speak, we're singing to each other because we're speaking on pitch and in rhythm. When we speak, we are singing to each other because we're speaking on pitch. And so the main difference to create melody out of speech is just to expand the speech, go up higher, go down lower, maybe stretch it a bit. But you can think of speech as in this narrow range and melody as in a wider range. And then we take that melody, which can be informed when I work with the children in Kid Pan Alley. We start with lyric because I want them to say exactly what they mean. And then I have them speak it. And then I show them the pitch that they're speaking on, and we all clap the rhythm. And then I say, who can sing it? And somebody sings it. I come up with a harmonization for it, or chords, we'd say, on the guitar. So many songwriters start with chords. And melody is really the essence of music. I know that because I saw it on a sign up on a column in the train station in Madras, India. It said melody is the essence of music, and it is. That's what we remember. That's what we leave the concert singing. We don't leave the concert singing the drum part or the bass part. Unless we're a bass player or a drummer, the melody is what we remember, even more so than the words. So we can remember melodies from when we were children. We might not remember all the words, but we remember the melodies. And I think the melody has a direct connection to our internal life. Music is the one art form that isn't a representation of something else. When you're painting, it may be abstract, but you've got something in your head that you're trying to express, like you're painting a chair. But music just connects directly to your emotions, and which is what makes it such an interesting language, is it's so directly connected to what you're feeling and your emotion.
Is that then something which just intuitively emerges, or are there principles to coming up with a melody that connects with emotions? When you work with kids, is there a difference to when you work with adults,
Yes.
educating them in songwriting?
Yeah. With the kids, well, that was kind of a multi-stage question, so I'll start with your first part here. The first part is I intuitively create, but I have enough knowledge of how it all goes that my intuition is often in the right ballpark. And then after I've written something, in the editing process, I have I have the experience to go back, oh, well, that's why this isn't quite working here. We need to do da 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 instead of blah, blah, blah. And I can say why that is, why this is not working because of my years of songwriting. So when I'm working with adults, I might do that. I might say, well, if I'm writing with another songwriter, well, this is almost working, but here's why I don't think it's working right as well as it could right here. Maybe we needed to do this. Whereas with the kids, I don't want to immerse them in the intellectual thought process of, here are the rules, because the real thing is we want them to get excited about creating, to get excited about the creative process, which is is different than the intellectual process. The intellectual process has its uses in part, and they come to bear and show themselves more in the editing function rather than the creative process. If you get too stuck in your head, the music doesn't flow. I kind of look at, a melody is like a river and it's flowing and you're kind of following it. And sometimes you need to change it some, but you really want that kind of continuity. You want it to flow from you, just like speech flows from us. We don't think of every word we're saying when we're speaking in English, and we don't think of the conjugation and, should that be past, future, present tense, or any of those things. We have spoken English for so long that it comes out naturally. And that's really what I want my music to do, is come out naturally. Now, when we're writing something or when we're speaking, we might go back and say, oh, I wish I had, oh, this isn't quite right. Or, when I look at something I've written and I might go, oh, the point of view changed here. Well, that's going to confuse people, so we have to fix that. But in the process of writing, I'm trying to get the story out, because the writing is really about the story. And then the rest of it is, technical stuff. It always cracks me up when I'm writing with a group of adults, not necessarily with, another songwriter adult, but if I'm trying to do a Kid Pan Alley-esque thing with adults, they sit there worrying about punctuation. I'm going, no, I don't care if it's a comma or a period. Nobody's going to hear the period. It's an auditory experience, not a visual experience. So let's not get stuck on, those things. Let's write the story, and then we go back and we edit and make sure everything makes sense and is not confusing to the listener. Because if you, like, say you change point of view, that is to be really clear so the listener knows who's speaking. The listener also needs to know what kind of material they're hearing. So in songs, the chorus has the same words and the same music each time you do it. So it's really hard to tell a story when you're saying the same thing over and over again. That's where the verse comes in. The verse is where we have different words each time, and so it's telling the story. So we want to make our sections contrast with each other, so the audience subconsciously knows that they're hearing overview and meaning in the chorus, and in the verse they're hearing story. And so they're kind of putting it together. But at the basis of all great art is story. We're telling a story. It may be abstract, people may not get it, or people may get a different story from it. When you think about, how, like, take a Bob Dylan song, and there are many interpretations of it. And that's part of the brilliance of it, and part of what Leonard Bernstein was talking about, the ambiguity, that it can mean different things to different people depending on their experience. The song is a very short form. It's a few minutes long, so you can't say everything in it. So you have to say enough that the listener has a way to enter into it, and then they fill out the other details from their own life experience. So we have to give the telling detail about the characters in the song, so that they have enough that they can enter into it and fill out the rest of the details. Like, I like to use as an example this Bruce Springsteen song. I slipped off her shoe. It was a perfect size 7. I said, "There's no smoking in the store, ma'am." She crossed her legs, and then we made some small talk. That's where it should have stopped. She slipped me her number. I put it in my pocket. Well, the next thing you know, they've robbed a bank. But those little details, the woman who comes into a shoe store, she's smoking, a guy who's kind of got a dead-end job. We can picture, I can say, what color was her hair? And, everybody thinks she's either dyed blonde or dyed red. What kind of dress does she have on? They can see it's short. They can tell all these things about her and him that make it make sense when they rob the bank. uh, just from that little verse about, you know, it reveals who they are. And I think that's it, is you reveal enough of the character and then the listener fills in what's in the middle. The song exists between the singer and the audience. Some singers think it's all about them. I think it's about the interaction between the two, because the listener has a different interpretation. And our job is to give them enough that they have a way to enter in, but not so much that they don't use their imaginations. We're inviting them to use their imaginations when we sing a song.
What you have produced and you're still producing and creating in terms of work, one could say that you in one form have mastered music writing or songwriting.
Oh no, I don't think I there's so much. There's so much. One of my neighbors, who's now passed away, was Lauren Mazel, who was the preeminent conductor in the world. He started conducting major orchestras at the age of 8 with the Pittsburgh Symphony, and then he was, you know, the conductor of the New York Philharmonic as his last post, but he conducted every orchestra in the world. And he was always learning about music. And he was the most brilliant musician alive at the time, you know, and conducted from memory. He didn't use a score unless it was some of his own work. But he learned, you know, he spent so much time learning. And so from, you know, the time he was 7 or 8 conducting to he died at, I think it was 84 or 85. I would say he knew more about music than anybody else I can imagine, but he didn't know it all. There's so many possibilities. You know, you take one note, well, then you take the next note. Well, you have, you know, maybe 11 choices for the next note, and then the next note, and the next note. And pretty soon, exponentially, you know, it's so many possibilities. And so you get really good at it. I mean, I'm a good songwriter. I wouldn't say I know everything about songwriting, and I never will.
I guess what I would love to know a bit more, because you mentioned it before, there's the intellectual process to songwriting or music making, but then there's also this intuitive creative process. And what would you say from your own experience and looking back over decades of dedicating yourself to this form of the creative process? Like, how important is it to learn intellectually principles or theories to be able to have this intuitive kind of approach to songwriting or music making?
Well, one of my favorite quotes about music is Elvis Presley said, "I don't know anything about music, and in my line of work, I don't need to." And well, that's really interesting that the king didn't know anything about music, but in his line of work, he didn't need to. So for me, I've written somewhere around 3,000 songs. My knowledge of music keeps me from writing the same song over and over again. Because you see, if we don't have much knowledge, we go back to what we already know. And we can, you know, our playground, our sandbox is smaller because we don't have the understanding of how music works to take us out of that. They say, you know, Vivaldi wrote 300 concertos, and someone, I don't remember who it was, said, no, Vivaldi wrote one concerto 300 times. I mean, he knew a lot about music. I'm being facetious there, but I do know people who write the same song over and over again, and they've written a lot of songs, but because of their lack of harmonic knowledge, they tend to write the same song over and over again. It might be in a different key, melody might be different, but the songs really start to sound the same after a while. And I would have gotten bored a long time ago if I wrote the same song over and over again. So I'm continually learning about music, continually learning, especially about harmony and all the various possibilities there, because it expands my horizon, keeps me from just repeating myself with what's comfortable. You see, and I think one of the problems for a lot of songwriters is first thing they do is pick up their guitar. And they've spent years training their fingers to go from C to A minor to F to G. And they let their fingers write the song instead of their imaginations. And so I find that no matter how experienced and harmonically advanced you are, you still have things that you go to because your fingers, they fall naturally under your fingers. So I like to write in my head and then find it on the instrument so that my imagination is what's writing. And I like to start, you can start in all kinds of different ways, but a lot of songwriters start off by coming up with a set of chord changes, and they tend to write the same songs over and over, between that. And, if you take all the songs from the 60s, they went, there's hundreds of songs from the 50s and 60s that use that same chord progression, and they all sounded like Dream, 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 because that evokes a certain melodic phrasing to it. So I think it's fine to start with chords. The other day I was messing around with this. Let's see if I can play it. Oh, I can't play it. And so on, and just kind of came up with this very unusual progression of things. And so then I haven't written a melody for it yet. I just kind of worked out the changes, and so that was really interesting to me because I made something that was a little bit hard to play and that I didn't really know, but I started hearing it in my head, this descending thing using second inversion chords. So it doesn't mean you should never start with chords, that you always start with the essence, or that you always start with a story. I mean, sometimes we'll start with a drum loop, sometimes we'll start with chord progression, but most of the time I like to start with either lyric or melody so that I tell the story. And then the melody, we can imagine all these melodies in our head, and we don't even have to be able to sing them. Dear friend John McCutcheon once nicknamed me Dial Tone at a recording session because I just wasn't a singer. And so my voice I had a very narrow range. But I can imagine all these melodies that only my friend Issei Barnwell from Sweet Honey in the Rock can sing because she's got like this 5-octave range. Not that I write things with 5-octave range, but it's in our imaginations, we can do things that our fingers are not capable of yet. So I like to write and then figure out how to play it later. And sometimes I write stuff that is beyond my ability as a player. Most of the time, I can figure out how to do it.
Some musicians, that's what I heard, or one person also shared with me in the conversation, is they experience songwriting as receiving a song and then just kind of providing a platform to express it. Yeah? But now what you're sharing, or what I'm making up from what you're sharing, is you're kind of actively imagining it in your mind. You're starting with something and then you're constructing it, you're creating it, and
it kind of goes back and forth between being the vessel that's receiving and directing it. So no, I mean, it's really all about listening, you see. And if we go for a walk by the river and we listen to the river, there's a melody in the river and we can hear it and we receive it. But that doesn't mean that we have to play the exact same melody the river is singing to us. We can change it to make it more powerful. Just like in songwriting, we're after the emotional truth, not the literal truth. It's not Dragnet and Sergeant Friday say, just the facts, ma'am. My dad used to say, never let the truth stand in the way of a good story. So part of our job as a songwriter is to take the inspiration of the story, but feel free to change it to get a deeper emotional truth from it. And so I think that's it's this mix of inspiration and then direction. The inspiration only goes so far, and we still have to craft it. We still have to, give it form. Both things happen for me. There is the receiving, and then there's also the steering it to make it more powerful.
I think I might not have shared it in the introduction this time, but the last time I did, you wrote script and music for 2 musicals. Is that correct? How do you approach a project like that? Where do you start? Is it a storyline? Is it a melody? Is it
Well, I kind of
a sense of something?
that. So I like doing long form. Songs are really easy for me. I mean,
Mhm.
I can sit down and write a song because I've done it so much. Long form's a lot harder, and to carry a story with a story arc that goes for an hour and a half or however long it's going for. It's a much more challenging thing to do that and to tie it all together. My first musical took quite a while because I had some songs that I thought fit together, and I started thinking about story. I started writing the story with a few songs that I knew were already written, but that I knew were guideposts in there, that I knew were
Mhm.
turning points, that I knew were important in there. But then you have to kind of create the rest of it. And so I started writing the script from there, and often, as I was saying, things turn into lyric pretty easily for me. So I'd write the script, and next thing I knew, a song had replaced the script. But it was trying to say it. I am not. I mean, our mutual friend Robert Fritz is
Mhm.
amazing, and he really, you know, plans it out. I mean, he knows where he's going. He knows exactly where he's going, and which is what's made him so remarkable as a composer, as a filmmaker. Uh, he's he's got the map is in front of him. I tend to wander a little more, and I tend to wish I could be more like Robert, but that's not how my brain works. Uh, and so, you know, I'll have kind of an overall idea, outline it a little bit, but I'm really still following intuition on following the song. I kind of feel like it's leading me and I'm following, and then I might, there are a million uh, paths, million divergent paths off the main path, and I might, go down a rabbit hole and explore one and find it's not the right one, and explore another one until I get it. And so I'm not as fast as someone like Robert is. And um, so the first one took a while because I basically started from nothing.
Mhm.
The story started to reveal itself from the few songs that I felt fit together. And then, how do you make this fit together? What's the connecting thread? And then other songs came and filled it out. My second musical, so after the first one, which I think, turned out very well. And people said to me, well, I really love this musical, but you're not known as a musical theater writer. Why don't you take a well-known property and create a musical from that so that you have something else to draw an audience? And so for my second musical, I took a dear friend of mine who wrote the Clementine series of books, which are a very popular series of children's books, and I adapted one of those. So the story, the framework was already there. And first thing I did was write a script because it was obviously, I wasn't just taking the book as it was, but I was, writing it as a script, which is different than a book. And then I started writing songs to replace parts of the script. And the longer I worked, the less spoken word there was and the more it was sung. And, but I did keep keep some dialogue and stuff in there, where the characters reveal themselves both through the song and through their dialogue. But it wasn't opera where everything was sung, so I would just kind of go from there. And on the second musical, I wrote a number of the songs with kids. So I would go in there, if we were going to do that kind of work with the school, I would say, well, have the kids read this book first. And then I'd go in there and I'd say, okay, we need a song for this section. And I would read them the section that I wanted a song for. And then we'd have the story, we'd have the frame, and then we'd start writing a song to fill in that part and basically replace the script, fill out the story with the song. And so that's how I did that one. I have another, I used to do a lot of music for theater. My late wife was an Obie Award-winning playwright, actress, and director. I did music for her plays for 25 years. And so I was used to long form and used to watching her write scripts. And, she was a great actress and a great director. And so it was very inspirational for me to see the way in which she worked. And that informed a lot of my writing. But I also wrote a full-length piece for Orchestra and Narrator, co-wrote with, based on Aesop's Fables. And so, everybody knows Aesop's Fables. And so I chose 5 fables and created a full-length piece for Orchestra and Narrator that just had another performance at a big hall in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And it was a blast. And what I love about all of this stuff is the collaborative process. So there I collaborate, the orchestra, the conductor took the Aesop's Fables, and he thought, oh, it'd be really interesting to have it choreographed. And so he got a choreographer and some dancers, and they choreographed the piece. Then he got this idea that he would have, he had a narrator who was a woman who narrated quite well, but then he created a character of Aesop, an old man with a staff and dressed as they would have in Aesop's time, sort of. At the very end of the piece, there's this coda, which is this ostinato, repeats, and the horn section improvises, or a horn player or two, because in most orchestras, they're not improvisers as much. So they would improvise over it. And what was the most fun thing, and I didn't know this was coming, so Aesop comes out there with his staff, and while this, ostinato kind of pattern is repeating and they're improvising over it, Aesop conducts, the conductor walks off, and Aesop's conducting with his big long staff, and it was hilarious. And I love that collaborative process. It took what we had done in writing it, and then took it and made it a collaboration with the choreography and some staging, and made it totally delightfully charming.
And in the songwriting itself, is there collaboration?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
specifically for, you shared that you're working with, that you did a song with the kids and so on, but
but with the kids, or I may be writing the song with another songwriter, or I may be writing it by myself. But then the actors take it, and the actors put their own spin on it and their own interpretation, and it becomes something else. Because I've written so much, I am not precious about my own work. That is, no, it has to be this way. No, I'm interested in what other people do with it. And do something that I don't feel is appropriate for it, that's one thing. But I love seeing how they take it and what they do with it. In September, I produced my late wife, her last play that she finished the week before she died, which had never been performed. So I produced it, and we got this wonderful actress, and she was working with a director, and it really wasn't happening. And she basically walked on the director and said, no, this is not right. And I said, well, do with it what you want, what feels true to you. And she was a friend of my late wife, Julie. And she basically took it and knocked it out of the park. It was spectacular. Whereas the director had put a spin on it that wasn't appropriate for the piece. He inserted himself much. And fortunately, the actress had the integrity to say, no, I'm not doing it that way. And so she took it and she really honored the work as it was written, but with her own interpretation. It wasn't what Julie would have done. And in fact, I thought, oh, nobody could do this as good as Julie, but she did, but a little bit differently. And I love that about collaboration.
Like when I'm listening to you, it seems so easy, and so simple and so effortless. But what I would love to ask, on the one hand, do you still have challenges in translating a story into a song, or finding a melody, or is it?
No, it's not painless. Sometimes it flows better than other times. But I think the real thing is sitting down and doing the work. That's what it's about. It's about sitting down and doing the work. And sometimes it's going to be easy, and sometimes it's going to be hard, and sometimes it feels impossible. And then all of a sudden, this little light comes on and leads you down a path. I think that I've written like 2,800 songs with kids now, and during each one, there's a point where I think, oh, this is really not happening. Too bad, kids. This is, you're going to be the one class that didn't get a song. But then all of a sudden somebody says something and it all falls into place. So it is this battle between doubt and trust. I've learned to trust that it's going to work out. And so I keep working until it does. Doesn't mean it's always easy. There are times when I just go, I have no idea what I'm doing right. I'm clueless. And then something happens and I find it. And so I've come to trust that that's the way it works for me.
And what I'm making up from what you're sharing is that that there's something beyond our rational capacity to understand, which puts things together in a way which we cannot completely understand. And also what you shared before about the director kind of imposing his own ego or ideas on the vision of what it really was about. So what's your insights or discoveries or experiences like over the years, decades in terms of who we are? Like each one of us, we tend to have beliefs, ideas, thoughts, feelings, this rational apparatus in us which wants to some extent have control and kind of impose egoic stuff on what we're doing. And what's your perspective on that, and your own kind of self-understanding, if I could phrase it that way?
Well, I think the more skill and experience we have, the freer we can be. I think when you're starting out writing songs, you think this is how it has to be. And even if you're co-writing, I know people who are, it has to be their way or the highway. And I think that comes from a certain insecurity because they don't have the experience and the skill to follow where it's leading. So they have to impose their will upon it so that it fits within the box of their personal experience. I'm a learner. I'm not a performer, I'm a learner. And Robert talks about this a lot, the difference between performers and learners. And a performer finds something that they were successful with and they keep repeating it. And a learner, once they've done that, they want to move on to something else. So that's why I wrote a full-length piece for Orchestra and Narrator. I had no idea how to do it. I wanted to learn, or writing musicals. Whereas other people may, have some success writing a song and they keep repeating that same song and just different keys.
Are you fed up of being paralyzed in a corset of rules and dependencies, seeing no way out because of doubts or senselessness, bumbling along numbly in your job or just toiling away, believing that something is wrong with you, or simply swimming in the conformity soup? In other words, wasting your life waiting around? If that's the case, you came to the right place. The Art of Creating workshop is all about waking up from your trance and revealing without doubt the incredibly creative spirit lying within you, reconnecting with your unique intuition and giving you powerful creative tools that empower you to create your life regardless of the circumstances the way you love it. Big words? Yes. But not even close to the reality and possibility of you. So sign up here now, let yourself be creatively blown away and wake up to the wonder of you.
As we were talking about earlier, but I want everything I'm working on to teach me something about it, I guess. And because of that, I want to be lost. If I know exactly where I'm going, I'm not learning. My late wife, Julie, used to say in her performances, and we had plays that we did like 300 times, around the country. And she always hoped that something would go wrong because it would inspire her to reach deeper there so that it never became rote. Even though she had done it 300 times, each time revealed a new meaning, revealed a new turn where it looked a little bit different. And when something went wrong, it even looked more different. And she loved those things about it because she was always a learner. She was learning, well, what do you do when this happens? What do you do when this happens? You don't plan for it, it just happens. And from your experience, you find the solution.
When you're writing a song, do you have a meaning in mind? Because you mentioned, I think just now and before also that one part of creation of song is also to enable the audience to find their meaning in the song. But do you as an artist, do you have a meaning in mind when you create it? But then at the same time, what you just said is you're discovering then like ongoing forward still new meaning in what you came up with. Or
So there is a central idea, let's write a song like, I came up with this line, Half-Life of a Broken Heart. It's going to be a song about a broken heart and that it takes time for that to heal and what's the half-life of it. But then it takes its own direction. So it's some of both. It's, we're just not starting like wandering around until we stumble on something. We might start with a bunch of different ideas and decide what the central idea is going to be. And then it's this combination of knowing where you're going, like Robert really knows where he's going, and that's the structural tension in it. He knows where he wants to go. And what makes me a little slower than Robert is I'm not as certain about where I'm going. And so part of it for me is following where the idea is leading me. Neither one is, both work. And I'd say it works brilliantly for Robert. I find if I spend too much time trying to figure out where it's going, I lose the thread. So I'm kind of this balance between, it's going over here, and it might be over here or over here, but it's the same general direction. But the way to get there is not quite as clear in my mind when I start.
But then your experience and your skill, which you have developed over the years, is enabling to just go with it and follow with it, even it's not too clear yet where you might end.
Yeah, I mean, I know where it's going, but I don't know exactly where it's going, and I don't know the metaphor. I don't know who came up with it, but it's not mine originally. It's like shooting an arrow into the forest. You're shooting at something. You're not just closing your eyes and shooting, but then you go and you draw the target around it. after you've shot it. And so, yeah, we're writing about that tree over there, but, it might be the tree to the left or the tree to the right, or who knows. Conscious, it's part discovery.
The other the other dimension of music, or perspective on music, I'm curious to hear your perspective on, is music and its possibility to heal or to facilitate healing or connection. Like, what's your thoughts on that? And why is music at times so deeply resonating and touching? And um, how does it connect
Healing.
to healing? Yeah, to
So,
help one another.
Novalis, who was, I think, an 18th century German poet, um, said, there is no illness, only musical problems. Now, that's incredibly deep. You see, our bodies, everything's vibrating. And if it's vibrating in harmony, we're healthy.
Mm.
And if it's vibrating in dissonance, there's illness. I mean, that's what I
Mm.
interpret what he said. And so music helps us harmonize our body. We entrain with the music, and that helps our bodies get in harmony. If if it's a song and the music is deepening the experience of the story, so much the better. But yes, music is very healing. And there's a difference between music and music therapy, however. So in music therapy, you're using music as a way of healing, but you're in your own story, and you're
Mhm.
kind of rolling around in it. And therapy is, you work from where you're at, from where the story is. And in creating, you step back from it. It's like you step back and you stick your thumb out and say, "Oh, it needs a little more of this and a little more." You're not as uh, stuck in your own story. You, as I was saying before about going for the emotional truth, you step back and say, "Well, I need to do this, to make this more emotionally powerful." But in therapy, you're working through what you consider the facts of your life, even though uh, Jill Kirk Conway said something like, all autobiography is essentially fiction, because we choose the facts, or we choose the parts we're going to say, that we're going to put out there. And so, since it's essentially fiction, we can step back from it and change it to make it more powerful. And so in creating, I think we step back further, and uh, we're not in the middle of it. We're creating this thing there as opposed to us being here. And that goes back to the story, or the song is the conversation imaginatively between the singer and the audience. They're making their own interpretation. They're stepping back from it, creating meaning from it.
And is there music you don't appreciate or you don't like? Is there something like that from your point of view?
Yeah, I don't appreciate bad music. Uh,
What, what makes bad music, or what's your perspective on music in the charts? Is that good music? What we tend to think of as popular music?
it's great. Some of it's, uh, very, not very original, uh, very derivative. Some of it's good, some of it's not. I think the great thing is that people are making music, that people are making art. You see, in the making, it changes us. In the making, it changes us. John McCutcheon said to me, he said, "Paul, writing songs with kids, you're doing a very radical thing there." Well, no, I mean, I'm not radical politically, he even said. No, I'm not doing anything politically. In fact, I have to stay away from politics with it, because, I'm there for the children. No, it says it's radical. What you're doing is you're getting them to think. And that's a radical thought in today's culture. We're told what to think, what to listen to by multinational corporations. By creating it yourself, you're exploring it and thinking about it as opposed to being fed this diet of popular culture. So I encourage everybody to do creative stuff, and I don't want to be sitting there judging this is good, this is bad. So I'm not going to answer like, well, what makes bad music? I'm glad that they're making it. Just it doesn't move me. It doesn't, it's not interesting to me because it's too derivative or I just don't get it. And for a while I felt that way about rap, and then I started hearing some great stuff from people like Eminem, and I go, wow, this is really interesting. And so I wouldn't say there's any kind of music I don't like, but I like music that is truthful and where there's exploration instead of derivation.
Well, that was another enlightening, very insightful conversation.
Well, I so enjoyed talking with you. You asked great questions, Simon.
Oh, I love just following what you're sharing and picturing it and in a way experiencing it. So that's very much appreciated that you're taking us on a journey into your world, through your eyes, enabling us to see to some extent. Yeah, very insightful. Yeah, very much appreciated. Yeah, we love if that's okay for you to link your website and
I don't spend a whole lot of time with my paulreisler.com website, but there's a bunch of stuff up there. And then also the Kid Pan Alley website gets a lot of attention. So yeah, it's kidpanalley.org. So like Tin Pan Alley, but kid instead of tin.
yeah, we will put it into the description and show notes of this episode so that everybody who's listening and watching this can find out more.
And I do teach songwriting. I just did a workshop in Italy, but the next one I think is I've been teaching at this Rocky Mountain Song School in Lyons, Colorado for the last 30 years, which is my favorite thing I do every year. And we have a bunch of great teachers there. I've been very involved in bringing them in over the years. And if people are interested in that, they can go to bluegrass.com/song school. Sign up early because it always fills up, but it's a really wonderful experience.
Okay, so we will also put the link into the description. I just opened it. I think the next date from what I see is in August.
Yes.
Next year. Okay.
Because mostly during this year, I'm doing Kid Pan Alley stuff mostly. I mean, I'll do some small workshops, go to Richmond or someplace and do a workshop, but for a thing for people to, come to from far away, Rocky Mountain Song School's the thing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Paul, yeah, for having the chance to meet you again and listening to your wisdom.
Forward to meeting you sometime in person.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah. I will see if I can join the songwriting training. Yeah. But full disclaimer, I'm a bloody amateur.
Well, we have everything from people who are first writing their first song to a lot of people who are out there performing full time as singer-songwriters. And I love that part about it because often, the person who's out there full time doing it thinks they know everything. A beginner has a different insight. It really helps people who have been doing it for a long time to see it from a different point of view.
And when I think back to when I was young, I would imagine all kind of music and like orchestra like thing. It was pretty cool. I never put it on paper. and as a child, I love to sing and whistle. And what I just discovered over the last I would say 2 or 3 years is writing poems out of the blue. They just come and then I'm putting them down I'm not saying they're amazing or so, but it just blows my mind where that comes from or came from, because I think there was like 20, 30 years between my early years and starting to explore creativity again, where I would experience life very mechanical, very rational, and there was also no appreciation or even valuation for creativity. There was a kind of a nonsense, like kind of unproductive thing for some.
Well, creativity is supported in school for the most part. We're teaching people how to take tests and how to think linearly and rationally. The process is not that. So I think that, that it's just a different way of thinking. And why don't you try taking one of your poems and setting it to music? And so I'll give you a little hint on how to do that. Speak it, clap the rhythm. Like if I said, clap the rhythm, that's the way you would speak it. So you would clap the rhythm and go, clap the rhythm, and then walk around and keep repeating it in that rhythm on those pitches, and then start using your singing voice. Instead of going clap the rhythm, you might go clap the rhythm and come up with some music. And you'll find that you might be a songwriter. You probably will be. So it's just doing that enough, because there is music in the words. And so all you're doing is listening for it and discovering it.
Yeah, when I had the moments of kind of making up a poem and kind of putting it out, it was like being in it. And I would continue, and the rhymes would just come organically together, and there was no real effort in putting it together. And I ended up rapping a few of them on the balcony. Yeah, kind of just being there and making it up. It was pretty fun. Yeah. So I think there's more to be explored and to discover. So that's definitely something I want to explore. So,
well, send it to me. I want to hear it.
Okay, I will contemplate that one. Yeah. Okay.
It's really been delightful talking with you again.
Yeah, likewise, Paul. Yeah, thank you so much. I wish you a good evening. All the best, health, love, lots of more creations coming through, and look forward to our next encounter.
You too. Thanks, Simon.
Yeah. Goodbye, Paul, and also goodbye to everyone. Take care and see you next time.